emotional. Parents die, she told herself. It happens. The three of them had moved into the newly constructed house in 1950, the year Van was born. The place had never been remodeled, nor had her parents purchased any new furniture. Her father never cared about such things. Her mother only cared about where to get her next prescription filled. The house was a 1950s museum. Pink and gray bathroom tile, red kitchen linoleum. Goodwill had taken the brown fabric couch and the cracked leather chair that bore the imprint of her father's body. The rarely used maple dining room set and the faded flower rugs went to a consignment store. From more than 1,000 books, she kept one. An 1871 volume of Longfellow's poems, covered in forest green cloth, with a worn gilt design on the spine. The elegant signature of Elizabeth Conrad, her father's mother, her grandmother, graced the title page. Van had never met her. What could she tell from one book? That she was literate? That she appreciated poetry? She supposed her grandmother's hands had once held this relic, the only piece of literature in her father's overstuffed bookshelves. It contained Longfellow's first epic poem, Evangeline. She must have read the poem to her father. Why else would he have given her that name? You discover things when you clean out a house after a person dies unexpectedly. For instance, there was no sign of alcohol, not even a lone bottle of port or sherry, the preferred beverage of her father's aging colleagues. Martin had never mentioned anything to her about his abstinence, but it made sense. Van attributed his lack of criticism over the last few years to the mellowing, the wearing down of old grudges that was supposed to accompany old age, and was grateful that they had established a kind of demilitarized zone in their phone calls. Even her position in women's studies no longer piqued him, nor did he rebuke her about his lack of grandchildren. She wasn't sure when her father had stopped drinking, but she knew when he had started. 30 years ago, the night of her mother's funeral, the last night she had slept in her childhood bed. After the funeral, Van had stayed in the house with her father. She woke in the dark with the familiar sense of someone calling her. They had called it sleepwalking when she was a child, but she always knew she was not sleeping. Her forays were just long enough to take in the night air, look at the winking stars and the great white swath of Milky Way. Sometimes the moon was visible, but the best was when it wasn't, for then the stars became more numerous, sharp, and glittering in the night sky. After a while, she would go back to her bedroom, satisfied that she had made her appearance to whatever had summoned her. She distinctly recalled the feeling of cool dampness on the soles of her feet as she slid under the covers and re-entered sleep. The night of her mother's funeral, this childhood habit got her out of bed, and she padded barefoot through the darkened house, heading for the back door. She was stopped in her tracks by the shadow of a hunched figure sitting at the kitchen table. She could smell the whiskey before she made out the shape of the bottle planted firmly in front of him, his hand holding a water glass. "Dad? What are you doing up?"
"Go back to bed, Vanjie,"
he said in a thick voice.
"Leave your old man to grieve in his own way."
She had obeyed his command for the next 30 years. They were not so much estranged as they were restrained around each other, held back, as if approaching the molten core of loss and love would set off a mutual conflagration, that sudden eruption of scorching anger and searing disappointment. The last time it happened was after she won a prestigious scholarship for graduate school at the University of Chicago. She called her father to tell him about it, but also to say she had fallen in love and was going to take the summer off to canoe in the Boundary Waters. Then her mother was suddenly and inexplicably dead. Later, when she told her father she was deferring her scholarship for a semester, letting him believe it was due to her grief, he wrote her a scathing letter enumerating his failures as a husband and a father. He had computed his only daughter into the sum of his losses, one too many by his accounting. Martin retreated into himself and grew into a sorry, solitary, wounded old